Gemini, a silent betrayal will be revealed. And this time, you won't ignore the signs. Gemini, someone close to you has underestimated your awareness. But what they forgot is this: you notice everything, even the things you pretend not to. A silent betrayal is rising to the surface. Not with explosions, not with confrontation, but with a stillness so sharp it cuts through illusion like glass. And this time, you won't be blindsided. You'll be confirmed. Have you felt it? That shift in energy when you enter a room? That text left unanswered? The subtle but undeniable feeling that something is off, but no one will name it? It's not paranoia. It's Mercury, the planet that governs your sign, casting light into the shadows of your relationships. And what's about to be revealed isn't just a truth about someone else. It's a truth about how deeply you've silenced your own knowing just to keep peace. I'm Elizabeth, your guide here on Esoteric Wisdom, and if this message found you now, it's because the universe is preparing you. You're not just about to discover something hidden, you're about to reclaim a part of yourself that's been long ignored. In the next moments, I'll walk you through the cosmic alignments that are exposing the betrayal. But more importantly, we'll uncover how you, Gemini, are being invited not to react, but to rise. This is not about revenge. It's about remembering who you are when no one else is honest enough to tell you the truth. Before we begin, subscribe if you feel the shift already happening inside you. And leave a comment if your intuition has been whispering that something or someone has been out of alignment. Now, let's begin. What's unfolding isn't just karmic correction. It's a revelation in Gemini. This time, you will not look away. Chapter 1. The mirror is cracking, and you already felt it coming. Gemini, the mind may lie to itself. But the body? The soul? They've been trying to tell you the truth for weeks. There's been a strange quiet between you and someone lately, an energy shift you can't quite explain. It's in the pauses between messages. The sudden, casual avoidance. The way conversations that once flowed are now cautious, rehearsed. You've noticed. Of course you have. You always do. But as Mercury sharpens your perception, the signs have become impossible to ignore. And this chapter of your life, this specific betrayal, it doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from someone you once believed would never cross the line. The betrayal might not be loud. It might not be dramatic. It may come in the form of withheld truth, a manipulated narrative, a decision made behind your back. And yet, your inner world has already been speaking in symbols. Interrupted sleep, vivid dreams, moments of irritability you can't explain. That's not anxiety. That's your nervous system responding to emotional dishonesty. Gemini, your sign is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury governs discernment, the ability to see through illusion. This means your clarity doesn't come from confrontation, but from recognition. And right now, the universe is tuning your inner senses to full volume. Have you found yourself suddenly recalling past situations that didn't make sense at the time, but now seem to click? That's not nostalgia. It's pattern recognition. Your subconscious has been quietly gathering data while your conscious mind tried to maintain the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about that. You've been trained by life, by love, by survival to give too many chances. You intellectualize red flags. You explain them away with logic. You say things like, maybe they're just going through something, or it's not that deep. But it was that deep. And you've been feeling the ache of that denial in your chest every time you told yourself otherwise. And yet, this is not a chapter of blame. It's a chapter of revelation. What's surfacing now isn't just about someone else's deception. It's about the ways you were willing to betray your own knowing in order to keep a version of the story that felt safer. Gemini, you're not just facing a person. You're facing a mirror. And it's cracking. Do you remember the last time you overrode your intuition to keep a connection? To protect the image of someone who no longer matched their energy? That habit, the one where you keep adapting, is being dissolved now. Not with force, but with light. Because Mercury is squaring Pluto in your chart this season, and that energy is ruthless in its clarity. Secrets come out. Silences are decoded. Emotional contracts you never agreed to are revealed. You'll begin to see where you were being managed emotionally manipulated, or simply underestimated. And what's wild is, it's all happening without your interference. You don't need to expose anyone. You don't need to dig. The truth is surfacing naturally, like oil on water. All you need to do is not look away this time. This chapter is about energetic accountability, and the universe is delivering it without you having to raise your voice or defend your worth. That's already been decided. So let me ask you something, Gemini. How much longer will you question your gut when it has never truly failed you? You are being called back into alignment with your first instinct, the one that noticed the misalignment long before there was evidence. And this time, you're not wrong. This time, you're not crazy. This time, you're ready to believe yourself, even when others won't. Because the betrayal that's being revealed is not just someone else's choice. It's the moment you finally choose you. Chapter 2. Cosmic justice doesn't always announce itself, but it always arrives. Gemini, the universe doesn't need to punish to correct. It doesn't shout. It doesn't strike. It rebalances. And right now, it's doing exactly that in your life, in your relationships, in the hidden corners of conversations you were once too generous to question. What you're experiencing isn't vengeance. It's restoration. And it's happening with or without your permission. That sense of unease you've had lately? It's the energetic equivalent of the scales beginning to tip. Slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. And the people who played with your trust, who leveraged your empathy, who thought your loyalty was limitless, they're about to experience a reversal. Not because you demanded it, because the energy they've sown has matured, and now it returns to them like a boomerang they never thought would come back. You may begin to notice strange synchronicities, a person who lied to you suddenly losing the support they once had. Someone who betrayed you inexplicably caught in a spiral of complications, setbacks, even public exposure. It will all seem strangely specific, but you'll know. You'll feel it in your bones. This isn't random. It's karmic precision. Here's the irony, Gemini. You never asked for this. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't even wish them harm. You simply stepped back, quietly, and tried to rebuild yourself. And that choice, to walk away instead of retaliate, is exactly what activated the field of cosmic justice around you. Your silence became sacred. Your restraint, powerful. You chose peace over power plays. And now, the universe is stepping in, not to protect your ego, but to protect your soul. Astrologically, Pluto's influence in your 8th house this season is no accident. It's digging into old wounds, exposing secrets, and pulling truth out of the shadows whether people are ready or not. Meanwhile, Saturn is laying boundaries around your relationships, karmic walls that say, this far, no further. And here's the deeper truth. This isn't just happening for you. It's happening through you. You are becoming a field of truth that others cannot lie inside anymore. Their masks won't stick. Their charm won't work. Their projections bounce off. Because you're no longer holding space for illusions. You're only holding space for what's real. This is why the betrayal hurts less now. Not because it wasn't real, but because you're no longer identifying with the role of the one who tolerates it. You're not broken. You're clearer. You're not angry. You're awake. You're not cold. You're discerning. And that change inside you, that vibrational shift, it's what's triggering the shifts outside of you, too. You'll notice people who once dismissed you now look confused in your presence. They'll sense it. The distance, the boundary, the absence of your old people-pleasing energy.
Some will panic.
Others will pretend not to notice. A few might try to return, but you'll be different. Not because you're trying to be, but because you finally are. This is the season where you watch, where you witness, where you stop explaining what only time and silence can reveal. Let the universe handle the rebalancing. Your only job is to stay in your integrity, to keep listening to the part of you that always knew, and to trust that no truth, once revealed, can ever be hidden again. This is what cosmic justice looks like for you now, Gemini. Quiet, undeniable, and entirely out of your hands. Are you ready to stop carrying what was never yours to hold? Because the moment you release that weight, something extraordinary begins to happen. The people who mistook your light for weakness will be forced to face their own darkness, alone. And you finally walk free. Chapter 3. Your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. Gemini, you've always known how to use your words, but now it's your silence that speaks volumes. And it's deafening. What's unfolding in your life isn't just a personal shift, it's a spiritual departure. One that doesn't come with goodbyes or explanations. One that simply happens. Like a door closing in a house no longer lived in. Like a frequency being tuned out of someone's reach. You're not leaving out of anger. You're not disappearing out of spite. You're detaching because something in you finally stopped arguing with your own knowing. The betrayal that's being exposed? It was never just about them. It was about the version of you that kept shrinking, editing, softening just to keep the illusion intact. And now, that version has expired. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in quiet truth. You see, Gemini, when Mercury, the messenger of the gods, starts activating Pluto and Saturn in your chart, you don't get subtle nudges. You get clear verdicts. And this season, the verdict is this. You were never supposed to stay in spaces where your intelligence was used against you. You were never meant to tolerate love that felt like negotiation. And you were absolutely never born to keep giving energy to people who turned your curiosity into vulnerability and then punished you for both. This chapter of your life isn't about revenge. It's about exodus. You're being pulled from the storylines that were feeding off your empathy, not because you hate them, but because your soul is tired of explaining to people what they already knew and chose to ignore. And what happens next? They'll feel it, not in one big moment, but in subtle, creeping ways. In the moments they instinctively reach for your voice and find silence. In the conversations they once controlled that no longer happen. In the emotional access they once had that's now locked behind doors they didn't even realize were closing. You don't have to say a word. They'll remember everything they dismissed when you were still soft, still forgiving, still trying. Because here's the spiritual law that governs Gemini right now. What they mistreated, they must now miss. And when that message comes in, too late, too vague, too easy, you won't even be angry. You'll be clear, because your inner compass has recalibrated. You're no longer asking, do they regret it? You're asking, why did I stay that long? That's growth. That's healing. That's karmic release. And the irony is the people who betrayed you won't understand how they lost you. They'll look back and try to pinpoint the moment they went too far, said too much, withheld one truth too many. But by then, the moment will have passed. You'll be long gone. Spiritually, energetically, emotionally. And Gemini, that's when you'll know you've really healed. Not because they apologized, but because you didn't need them to. Let this chapter be your liberation song. Not because they're hurting, but because you've stopped needing to prove that you deserved better. You always did. You just finally believe it now. And while they sit with the echo of your absence, you'll be building the next version of your life. Lighter, wiser, and uncompromised. Chapter 4. The new people coming in are a reward, not a replacement. Gemini, the universe isn't just removing what no longer serves you. It's preparing you to receive what always belonged to you, but couldn't reach you until you cleared the space. There's something extraordinary about what's coming next. And it's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not a grand entrance. It's a quiet click. A soul-level recognition. You're going to start meeting people who don't need to be convinced of your worth. Who don't misinterpret your curiosity as inconsistency. Who don't weaponize your empathy or shrink from your intellect. These new connections? They are mirrors, not masks. The friends who arrive now will feel like memory, not novelty. The collaborators will feel like co-creators of something meaningful, not competitors for your attention. And for some of you, yes, the new love may begin to unfold. One that doesn't demand your silence or your constant explanation. But we must be clear, these people are not replacements. They are rewards. Rewards for every time you stayed kind in the face of manipulation. For every time you chose growth over vengeance. For every time you walked away without needing to be seen as right. And how will you recognize these people? Not by how exciting they are, but by how peaceful you feel around them. There will be no guessing, no walking on emotional eggshells, no decoding passive aggression. They won't confuse you, because you'll finally be unconfused within yourself. Gemini, the betrayal you went through didn't break you. It broke open the illusion you were living under, the one where you convinced yourself that your adaptability was enough to fix a connection. But now you're learning a new way. You're learning to match energy, not to prove yours. This new life you're entering doesn't require you to be less of anything. In fact, the more too much you become, the more honest, expressive, expansive, the more you'll find people who say, finally, someone who gets it. This is Mercury's higher octave at work in your chart. The integration of your duality. No more swinging between over-explaining and disappearing. You're stepping into wholeness. Into conversations where your mind is seen and your heart is held. Where your energy is met, not drained. Where your love is not a negotiation. It's a celebration. But here's the quiet test that comes with this chapter. Will you let yourself be loved in this new way? Will you let go of the reflex to shrink, to accommodate, to wait for the other shoe to drop? Because healing doesn't just mean cutting off who hurt you. It means allowing what's good to stay. And that requires a different kind of courage. So let me ask you now, when these new people appear, and they will you trust what feels calm more than what once felt familiar? Will you welcome them without suspicion, without apology, without delay? Because they've been waiting to meet this version of you. The one who no longer needs to prove. The one who has nothing to fix. The one who finally knows. Your energy is a gift, not a test. And just like that, Gemini, you stop orbiting others and become your own center. That's the real shift. Chapter 5. Your liberation will be quiet, but it will change everything. Gemini, when this final moment comes, the moment when the truth is no longer just suspected but confirmed, you won't explode. You won't scream. You won't collapse. You will exhale, because by then, the weight will have already been lifted. The distance will have already been created. The reckoning already set in motion by higher forces. And your role? Already complete. What was once a consuming ache to be understood, to be believed, to be seen, will be replaced by something far more powerful. Clarity. Not the kind of clarity that begs for closure, but the kind that simply says, this is no longer my story to carry. You see, Gemini, true liberation doesn't always look like a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's a subtle turning inward, a quiet refusal, a choice not to engage, a peaceful withdrawal from dynamics that once kept you spinning. And make no mistake, this inner exit will change the atmosphere around you. Because here's what happens when a Gemini truly withdraws their energy. The air shifts. The room cools. The color drains from conversations that used to rely on your sparkle. Your presence was never just company. It was color, it was clarity, it was movement. And your absence? It will be unmistakable. The person who betrayed you won't feel your anger. They'll feel your absence. And that silence will be more deafening than any confrontation you could have offered. It will echo in their mind during quiet nights. It will play like a song that used to bring comfort, but now only brings memory. Because here's the final lesson. Not every betrayal needs a punishment.
Some just need to be seen.
And now that you've seen it clearly, Gemini, you're free. Free to stop hoping they'll change. Free to stop analyzing their words. Free to stop folding yourself in half just to keep the connection intact. This is the season where you don't chase apologies. You become the closure. Not bitter. Not bruised. Just whole. And what grows in that wholeness is sacred. New boundaries. Deeper friendships. Creative fire. A voice that no longer apologizes before it speaks. Laughter that feels full again. Sleep that's uninterrupted. A nervous system that's no longer scanning for threats in every silence. And most importantly, a relationship with yourself that no longer needs someone else's approval to feel valid. Gemini, you've broken the cycle. You've returned to yourself. You've remembered that truth is not a confrontation. It's a home. And now, you're finally walking in the direction of your own becoming. Conclusion. The universe was never late. It was just waiting for you to see. Gemini, you didn't overreact. You didn't imagine it. You didn't misread the signs. That whisper in your intuition, the one you kept quiet for too long, was truth speaking through you before the world could confirm it. And now, you see it plainly. The betrayal wasn't just theirs. The deeper wound was in the ways you betrayed your own clarity to preserve an illusion. But now the illusion has shattered. Not in rage, not in revenge, in revelation. And that's where your power begins. Not in proving anyone wrong, but in no longer needing to carry what never belonged to you. You were never weak for staying. You were loving. You were never foolish for hoping. You were faithful. And you are not broken because it ended. You are reborn because you finally honored the truth. What you've stepped into is more than closure. It's sovereignty. Now, every no you say is sacred. Every boundary you draw is an affirmation. Every person you release becomes a space where something purer can grow. You won't have to explain the shift to everyone. You will feel it in your nervous system, your breath, your spirit. Lightness will return. Creativity will stir. Peace will be felt, not as escape, but as home. This is the justice the universe promised, not in punishment, but in freedom. And, in case no one has told you lately, you did not deserve the betrayal. You did not fail because they couldn't see you. You are not too much, too sensitive, or too hard to love. You are finally aligned with the kind of love, divine, steady, truthful, that begins with how you see yourself now. And what happens next? Everything begins now.